Step into a virtual gallery where the silence is not empty but thick with the hum of processing power. The walls aren't plaster, they are pure data, shifting, shimmering, displaying artworks that defy physical form. Here, glowing pixels coalesce into impossible forms, each piece humming with a nascent, almost frantic energy. It's 2021, and the air crackles not just with electricity, but with pure, unadulterated speculation. We're standing at the epicenter of the NFT art phenomenon. Digital files, seemingly infinite and endlessly reproducible, are suddenly being imbued with uniqueness, scarcity, and staggering value through the cryptographic magic of the blockchain. This wasn't a quiet evolution, it was a supernova. The moment that ignited the mainstream consciousness, of course, was the sale of Beeple's Everydays, a first 5,000 days at Christie's. A monumental digital collage, a mosaic of daily artistic exercises, fetched an astonishing $69 million. The gavel fell, and its sound echoed from the hollowed halls of a 250-year-old auction house into the decentralized, chaotic wilderness of the internet. This transaction was a cultural earthquake. It didn't just sell a JPEG, it sold a concept, a paradigm shift that sent tremors through the very foundations of the art world. The tension was immediate and palpable. On one side, you had the evangelists, the digital natives, and the long-overlooked digital artists who saw this as a glorious revolution. For decades, they had created work that was devalued precisely because of its digital nature, easily copied, impossible to own in the traditional sense. Now, blockchain technology offered a solution, a public, immutable ledger that could verify authenticity and track provenance. The language was utopian. This was the democratization of art, a movement that would empower creators, cut out the gatekeeping galleries, and establish a direct, transparent relationship between artist and collector. Platforms like Foundation and SuperRare became the new salons, digital spaces where artists could mint their work as unique tokens, and collectors could display their acquisitions in virtual galleries, their ownership proudly and permanently recorded on the Ethereum blockchain. The rise of generative art platforms like art blocks further complicated the narrative, where the collector didn't just buy a finished piece, but initiated a unique creation through the execution of an algorithm, becoming a co-creator in the artistic process. This was a radical redefinition of ownership, a move from possessing a physical object to holding a cryptographic key that pointed to a piece of culture. It was thrilling, chaotic, and felt, for a moment, like a genuine renaissance. On the other side of this chasm stood the skeptics, the traditional art world establishment, and a growing chorus of critics. They saw not a renaissance, but a hyper-capitalist playground, a speculative bubble of historic proportions, fueled by crypto nouveau riche and a pervasive tech bro euphoria. The aesthetic of early high-value projects like CryptoPunks and the Bored Ape Yacht Club, pixelated avatars and cartoon primates, seemed to them less like fine art and more like digital Beanie Babies, collectibles whose value was driven by hype, community insider status, and the promise of a quick flip. The discourse was less about artistic merit, composition, or conceptual depth, and more about floor prices, gas fees, and diamond hands. The critique was sharp. Was this truly about art, or was it a thinly veiled, unregulated financial market masquerading as a cultural movement? The lines blurred completely between artistic vision and investment frenzy, between patronage and gambling. Every sale was broadcast on Twitter, not with a critical review, but with a price tag and a rocket emoji. The very idea of digital scarcity felt like a manufactured absurdity to many. How can you make something infinitely reproducible scarce? The answer, because the token is unique, often felt like a circular, self-referential justification that ignored the nature of the art itself. This clash of worldviews wasn't just a debate, it was a fundamental conflict over the definition of value. As the initial gold rush saw millions of dollars exchanged for files that could be, in the parlance of the critics, simply right-click saved, a crucial and unsettling question began to form in the digital ether. Could this dream, built on code and consensus, truly last? Or was it merely a fleeting, collective hallucination? Extending that initial euphoria, we inevitably confront the precipitous descent, the moment the laws of market gravity reasserted themselves with brutal force. The digital dream, once so luminous and full of promise, began to flicker and fracture under the weight of its own speculative excess. From the latter half of 2022 and deep into 2023, the supernova of 2021 imploded into a crypto winter. The vibrant, bustling virtual galleries grew quiet. The constant chatter of record-breaking sales on social media was replaced by a somber silence. This was the Great Correction. NFT prices plummeted, revealing the fragility of speculative bubbles. The floor price, that baseline value for the cheapest item in a collection, for many once hyped projects like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, which had become synonymous with digital luxury, fell by over 90% from their peak. Fortunes made in months were wiped out in weeks. This wasn't just a market downturn, it was a gut-wrenching reckoning. Collectors who had poured life savings into these digital assets were left holding illiquid tokens, their cryptographic keys now unlocking access to communities that had gone silent, and JPEGs that were culturally and financially devalued. The bitter taste of buyer's remorse was pervasive. This financial collapse cleared the air, allowing a storm of critical discourse, once drowned out by the roar of the hype machine, to finally land with devastating impact. The most potent and persistent critique was environmental. The majority of early NFTs were minted on the Ethereum blockchain, which at the time used a proof-of-work consensus mechanism, an energy-intensive process that, by some estimates, consumed as much electricity as a small country. Artists like Joni LaMercier and Memo Octon became vocal critics from within, publishing damning research on the carbon footprint of their own NFT sales. Acton's piece, The Unreasonable Ecological Cost of #CryptoArt, went viral, forcing a painful conversation. Could an artist, particularly one whose work might engage with themes of nature or climate, justify using a technology so demonstrably harmful to the planet? The community's defense often pointed to the future, to Ethereum's planned transition to a more energy-efficient proof-of-stake system. But for many, the damage was done. The utopian rhetoric of a new creator economy was irrevocably tarnished by the dystopian reality of its ecological cost. This wasn't just a technical problem, it was an ethical crisis at the heart of the movement. Beyond the environmental fallout, a wave of social and artistic critique gained traction. The market was exposed for its rampant wash trading, a single entity buying and selling an asset to itself to artificially inflate its price and create a false sense of demand. Scams, from rug pulls where developers vanished with investors' funds to phishing attacks that drained wallets of their valuable assets, became commonplace. The promise of decentralization was also called into question. Major platforms, like OpenSea, while facilitating a supposedly peer-to-peer market, acted as centralized arbiters, delisting collections and freezing assets, revealing that the new boss was, in many ways, just like the old boss. The art world's critical apparatus, which had been slow to engage, began to publish scathing reviews, questioning the artistic merit of the profile picture projects that dominated the market. Were thousands of algorithmically generated variations of a cartoon animal truly a significant contribution to art history, or were they a novel form of digital branding? The emperor, it seemed, was not only wearing new clothes, but was perhaps entirely naked, his ambition for quick riches now glaringly exposed. The crash forced a vital reevaluation. It was a filter, a painful but necessary purge of the speculators and grifters, leaving behind a core of artists, builders, and collectors who were forced to answer a more profound question. Beyond the astronomical numbers and the broken promises, what, if any, enduring value did this technology truly offer to the world of art? From that market's harsh correction, From the ashes of the speculative fire emerges a more resilient, focused, and conceptually sophisticated vision. The question that hung in the air was no longer if NFTs were dead, but rather what essential qualities would survive the purge. What we are witnessing now is not a return to the frenzy of 2021, but a quiet, determined evolution. The narrative is shifting from NFTs as speculative financial instruments to NFTs as tools for community and utility, not just assets. This is the movement's second act, one defined by purpose and innovation rather than pure price action. We see artists moving beyond the static image, leveraging the unique technological properties of the blockchain to create works that are dynamic, interactive, and deeply integrated with the digital medium itself. The technology is no longer just the frame, it is becoming the canvas, the paint, and the brush. Consider the work of an artist like Refik Anadol. His large-scale AI-driven data sculptures, such as the unsupervised installation at the Museum of Modern Art, are not simply displayed and then sold as a picture. Instead, Anadol uses the blockchain to create living artworks. The NFT associated with his work is not a mere certificate of ownership for a static file. It is a key that grants the collector access to an evolving, generative piece that changes over time, responding to new datasets. The artwork's smart contract, the self-executing code stored on the blockchain, becomes an integral part of its conceptual foundation. This is a profound shift. The NFT is no longer just a receipt, it is a component of the art's very existence, a mechanism for its continued life. Similarly, curators and institutions are exploring the use of NFTs to solve long-standing problems of provenance and preservation for ephemeral art forms. A piece of performance art, which exists only in a specific time and place, can now be memorialized on the blockchain. The NFT can contain documentation, artist instructions, and exhibition rights, creating an immutable, verifiable record that ensures the work's legacy and allows it to be collected and re-performed faithfully for generations to come. This new chapter is also rewriting the rules of patronage and community. The conversation has matured from what's the next 100x flip to how can this technology empower creators and connect audiences in meaningful, sustainable ways. The rise of art DAOs exemplifies this. Collectives like Pleasure DAO or Fingerprints DAO are not single collectors, but global groups of individuals who pool their resources to acquire significant works of digital art, effectively democratizing high-level patronage. Decisions about acquisitions and curation are made collectively through token-based voting, challenging the hierarchical structure of the traditional art world. Furthermore, the smart contract's ability to automatically enforce artist royalties on every secondary sale is a quiet but powerful revolution. In the traditional art market, an artist typically sees no profit after the initial sale of their work. With NFTs, a creator can code a 5% or 10% royalty into the smart contract, ensuring they receive a portion of the proceeds every time their work is resold, in perpetuity. This creates a sustainable economic model that directly supports artists throughout their careers. The stakes are no longer just market value, but cultural identity, decentralized governance, and the very architecture of our future digital heritage. The bubble may have burst, but its pop cleared the way. What remains is the foundational technology and its potential for genuine artistic innovation, echoing a new era of possibilities.